Wala loyal. It's Karama. My name is Mutiu Olawuyi, your regular host of this unique program or unique show called Artflakes on CBA. This time around, we're within, we're not going without. And I'm not going to explain this in detail until you get to the other side of the show with me. Meet me there and we'll discuss in detail. Welcome once again to the other side of the studio. My name is Mutiu Olawuyi, and today we're going to be exploring not a country, but a country within a human. And who is this person? We'll get to that when you know the guest that we have today. And our guest here today is no other person except Mr. Abubakar Ubaji. Welcome to Artflakes.
Thank you very much.
It's been a long time.
Yeah, it's been quite a while now.
You must have traveled to another world of literature.
Hey, indeed, I have traveled far and wide in the arena.
What do you have for us this time around? Since you have traveled, you must have brought a lot of things. Maybe you entered Somali literary world, African literary world. I don't know. What are you bringing for us today?
Basically, we are still around within Africa, and we are zooming in on East Africa.
Okay.
And apart from looking at East Africa, we are looking particularly at the country, like you rightly put it, a country within a man. We are considering the work of Mohamed Hashi, Dhamac, popularly known as Gaariye.
Dhamac.
Yeah, Dhamac, a popular Somali poet.
Gaariye.
Exactly, that's the name.
Gaariye is a very, very popular Somali poet.
Indeed, he is.
He has done a lot of work.
A lot.
I believe that our viewers will surely enjoy us today.
Definitely.
So just take your time and relax. Watch us and let's see what Mr. Abubakar Ubaji has in his tank as far as Gaariye is concerned. All right.
There's a lot to talk about.
Who is Gaariye? Because we have a lot of people who are non-Somali. We want to know exactly who is this person.
Gaariye is a Somali poet born in Azeez in 1949. And you see, we do say that while there are those who have acquired certain things based on learning, there are those who are naturally gifted, who are born with a talent. And Gaariye is one of such special people. For a man who studied biology, you marveled at the immensity of the words in his archive, the kind of words he used, his ability to create things from actually basically nothing. Looking at what happens around him and the society, and he's able to carve out beautiful form of poetry, even to the point of creating a form of poetry which is today known as Dili, and a form of poetry that rhymes in D. So you can see the extent to which this man has gone to bring up something beautiful, and not just to Gaariye alone. I think it is a gift of the Somali people. They are very creative with words. Their use of words is profound, and you find that deepness in the use of their language. They are able to create sweet flowing poetry from just mere words around them, and you know, it doesn't even have to do with getting an education. That it flows naturally. And it's just amazing that most of these poems are not codified in the English language, rather they remain in the Somali language, which has made it inaccessible to some. But I think thanks to the effort of translators like Dhamac, Owen, I think his name is Owen, I think so. How about Owen? Yeah, I was and another professor. Some of them like that, they've been able to achieve this translation into English. And today, people like myself and others who cannot speak the Somali language can have easy access to the Somali poetry. And I am glad to have encountered their poems. You know, it's a challenge to me that I'm learning poems in translation. I'm seeing this, and actually I can I can relate with the people. I can relate with the flow of the poem and everything like that. And it's pushing me towards even wanting to learn more of the Somali language, because I believe that there are hidden treasures that we've not been able to excavate in the literary arena. There is a lot and lots to talk about in the literary world. You know, you talk of Abu Hadra, you talk of Adrawi, and there are several poets like that, using Somali language to create beautiful poetry. Lyrical ones that has the type that has no match anywhere in the world today. I've assessed the works of Adrawi and I've seen that of Gaariye, and you know, I'm marveled. I'm surprised, and this is something I'm seeing in a second translation. Imagine if I'm seeing that thing, I'm reading it directly. How would you feel? And you know, one thing about our poems, based on my finding, is that it can easily be converted to song. In fact, most of their poems exist as songs sung by the local musicians here. How many English poets have achieved that same feat? It's very rare. So we must applaud them for their effort in language use. It's gargantuan. We just have to respect that.
Having diverted to the Somali literary world, I want us to now look at the impact of Gaariye in the life of the people, particularly through his work. Generally, what has he been able to use his work to change in the society?
Gaariye is a man of many parts, and apart from being a writer, he was also a known activist. This is a man who has never stood down for oppression and suppression. Wherever he sees them, be it in the world today, be it in his own country, in his society, or even outside his word, Gaariye will surely talk about it. He never keeps quiet in the face of oppression. And that is one thing that you know a real man. His art goes beyond just writing. The poetry for him is not just word, but it is the manipulation of language to achieve the desired effect. And that is Gaariye for you. With this pen in his palm, and when he writes, he spits fire. He believes, for him, poetry is a gun that with which you can fight against the evils of society. So for him, the role of the poet goes beyond just concocting lines of verses of poetry. It goes beyond that. For him, poetry is beyond just words. It is action. It is words put into action. It is charged language that can be used to achieve a certain effect. And that is the uniqueness of Gaariye. Not only Gaariye, even Adrawi also has that same feat. Gaariye has been able to use his work to criticize the military regime of Siad Barre, because that was the era in which he wrote. And you know, is this type, he will tell you, even in his poems, there are evidences of his poems. In his poems, he will tell you that where there is oppression, where there is tyranny, the poet must not stand down. The poet must stand up and strike out against it with words. And he says that poetry is not for sale. You can't sell poetry. You can't buy it. Because the poetry to him, poetry is truth. It must speak the truth to the oppressors. It must tell them where they have gone wrong.
And it is difficult to sell the truth.
Yeah, it is difficult to sell the truth, because no matter how well you try, no matter how much you try to bury it, it will still grow. It reminds me of a poem of his called Kudu. The longhorn antelope, big antelope. You know, the poem encapsulates a certain story, and in this story, you are going to find it's about a king. Gaariye said his father told him that story. It's about a king who grew horns like the kudu, and the king tried as much as possible to hide these horns from the people, but his personal servant knew that the king had horns. And then the servant knew that if he should broadcast it to the world that the king has horns, it may end his life, because that may be his death. So he could not tell anybody. But this secret kept growing in him and kept boiling in his mind. He did not know who to tell. At the end of the day, one night he woke up and just walked outside. He dug a hole in the ground and opened his mouth and said, "The king has horns like the kudu." He said it 3 times into the hole, and he buried it. Now when he buried it, he left. After some time, soft rains fell on the earth where this secret was buried, and from that soil grew horns like that of the kudu. So the essence of this folktale, of this simple folktale, as simple as it is that it highlights the fact that no matter how well you try to bury truths, right, it will still grow. It will still grow. Once the time comes for it, it will grow. You can sell a lie for 1,000,000 years, but one day the truth will surely rise out of the ground like a plant growing from the wet soil. So you can see that to him, he believes that truth cannot be compromised. And with that, he has been able to push the frontiers of Somali poetry. Gaariye has performed basically in most part of the world, be it in the western part, in the eastern part, or even down in Africa here. So, and his poetry is widely accepted, be it in Somali or in the English form, because his projection is beyond just his immediate society. His projection is in the world. He's an activist. He doesn't stand down for oppression and suppression, and that's why he's respected worldwide as a poet and well known, well recognized. And he ended his life as a lecturer, or as a lecturer of the Somali literature.
You were talking about having him as an activist.
Yes.
An activist who does not only focus on his own people, but move beyond the border.
Yes,
Can you
exactly.
recall some of his activism that has to do with fighting with his word for oppression or suppression, or for freedom, or against the oppression or for freedom of people beyond the boundary?
Yes, I seem to remember the poem titled Mandela, one of his poems. You see, the poem Mandela was actually composed as at the time Mandela was incarcerated, and Gaariye was lampooning the injustice of the racialism or the segregation or the apartheid system in South Africa, and it was showing us that there can be no justice for Mandela since the justice system is based on the white system alone. When the judge is the white, the jury is the white, the witness is also the jury and the prosecutor, then where can there be justice?
And that's why he said the oppressor comes into court.
Yeah.
He is the prosecutor.
He's the prosecutor.
He's the judge.
He's the judge and everything.
Jury.
So how? He's even the law, because he makes the law, and the law favors those that make it.
There's no win or lose.
There's no win. He cannot win the case. So basically, it's going to be an end.
So the case is cut and dried.
Exactly. And there is also this poem, "Death of a Princess."
Okay.
I think it happened in Saudi Arabia, so in the 90s.
Okay.
So where a princess was killed because she fell in love with a man that her family did not choose for her. Where she fell in love with a student in Lebanon when she went there to study. And she decided to marry the man against the wishes of of her family and her parents, and she consummated the marriage. And the story holds that her father once even tried to convince her and tell her, you cannot do this, because at the point when she was arrested, she was trying to elope with the man. And when she was arrested, her father tried to convince her, say you have nothing to do with him. But she insisted no, that she won't go against, she won't deny the man before any other person. She won't say they did not have anything. They were actually in a relationship, and with that, she was shot dead before the lover was beheaded. So Gaariye sees these as a kind of a suppression of the love between two people. Why should love be based on class or where you come from or what family you come from? People should have the free will to make choices at times. And it certainly the society she lived in was, unfortunately for her, did not permit such to take place. So her love couldn't go on. It had to be stopped midway. But you see, that is where you see Gaariye. Gaariye never stands down where he sees things that he's supposed to say. He will tell you that this is how it's supposed to be and this is how it should be, or this is what we ought to do. So, and there is also this Watergate, another poem of his.
Before we get to that Watergate, you just remind me of the Somali culture when it comes to marital life. If no matter how young a child is, maybe they're in secondary school, which is very common these days, if they fall in love, a girl falls in love with another boy, whether working or not working, if the parent decide not to accept the proposal, they elope and move to maybe another town, maybe from Hargeisa to Gebile, or from Gebile to Bra, somewhere like that, or Barama. Once that happens, it is compulsory for the parents to make sure they settle and make sure the marriage is done properly.
Exactly.
So they have that. If a parent decide not to, it's going to be punished by the society. So I think that has effects. Because if such a thing has been running in the past like this,
but
it shows that the Somali community do not have that kind of strict system.
Yes, exactly.
In their own oppression.
Exactly. You are correct there. You are correct. I think they've been able to find a solution to such problems. That when it happens, this is what we need to do. These are the steps we need to take. Not
if
to
they
actually go ahead and
the child first to listen to them, and if they elope, compulsory, the
marriage
must come together and make sure they finalize it.
I think that is a very sensible and humane way to attend to issues such as that. But in the death of the princess, is unfortunately the princess is dead. But that is she's killed.
Contrary to the Arab world system.
Yes, contrary. But at the end of it, we also learn to appreciate what we have in our culture that others, the extent we've come in life. I think the way the women in Somaliland are even treated here, it's from my experience, it's far better compared to other places. Their women have more freedom than what is admissible in other places. So, but coming back to, if you're going to look at, still speaking of what his activism has been in the other part, outside his immediate society, speaking of this Mandela's poem, I think, in side by side with the xenophobic attack in South Africa, I think most South Africans need to do a lot of history research. They need to know more about their history. Because you see, where South Africa is today is not outside the effort of the foreigners, or those who are looking at as foreigners, other Africans who have struggled on their behalf, who have lambasted the racist system that was operational during the apartheid days in South Africa. But they seem to have forgotten, and today it's now a case of brothers against brothers fighting brothers. And I keep asking myself, what if these people who have written these poems, people like Gaariye, who are still alive to witness this day, to see what South Africans are doing to their fellow brothers, those who stood by them when they were nothing. So you see, at a point in time, it makes me wonder why. But that is not the point today. We're talking about Gaariye and
the effort of Gaariye.
Yeah, so
you
we
also
focus
identify one other work of Gaariye.
Yeah, the Watergate. It's about I think President Nixon. But Gaariye was not just looking at that particular incident alone, where Nixon tried to go against his opponent by burgling his opponent's office. And also, I think there was also a poem called NATO, I think NATO. So it's about Algeria being prevented from joining the NATO group association then. So Gaariye has always been vociferous when it comes to injustice around the world, and he doesn't stand down. He will tell you as it is and what should be. But most importantly, sometimes he uses that to mirror his society, because as a poet, if you have to pass a message across, the idea of poetry deals with the economy or the husbandry of words. It's not just a straightforward affair. It deals with the dislocation of language, and you see that a lot in Gaariye's poem. While he's rallying against the injustice outside his immediate society, in a way he finds a way, to connect it with what is going on in his own society. He views the case of South Africa as the case of oppressors and the oppressed. The oppressed on one side and the oppressors on the other side. In the case of South Africa, you have the whites as the oppressors and you have the blacks as the oppressed. In the Somali society today, you have the Siad Barre as the oppressed and his team as the oppressed, and you have the ordinary masses as the oppressed. Siad Barre is the oppressors.
I know we have a lot to discuss about this. I want us to just go for a break. After the break, we'll continue from there.
All right,
So see you later. Column Educational and Technical Center is an internationally recognized institution located in Hargeisa, Somaliland specifically. At QETC, we offer courses in English language, particularly International English Language Testing System, which is IELTS, Test of English as a Foreign Language, TOEFL, Scholastic Aptitude Test, which is SAT, SAT, Academic Writing, Business English, and 1 year intensive functional English course, which covers the listening, speaking, reading, and writing. If you want to improve yourself in the use of English language, there is no other place for you to go except QETC. Professionalism is our watchword. Productivity of our learners is our watchword. Column Educational and Technical Center, education for universal productivity. All right, welcome back to Artflakes. We've been discussing about the Gaariye. Gaariye, you have seen how far he has influenced the world with his literary work, with his poetic prowess. How far he has been able to explore the world and use that to convey didactic message to his own people. That's why he uses language. It would have been impossible for the world to understand the influence of Gaariye if this has not been translated. So we appreciate Albert and others, including Dr. Dhamac, who has also helped in translating this work for the world to understand the influence of Somali, particularly Somali writers, Somali poets, Somali public speakers on the life of the people beyond their boundary. Let's continue from where we stop. You mentioned CBATV. I want you to go deeper into the activism of Gaariye during the time of CBATV and what has that resulted to?
I think CBATV regime came as a kind of salvation to the Somali. At least many people viewed it like that. And, you know, like, it came with the communist style of government, and several Somalis appreciated it. And it was more of activating the Somali way of life, the culture, and creating a kind of cultural revolution, even advocating, I think even it was the one who initiated the idea of using the use the English, the Latin alphabet structure for in writing the Somali language. You know, he was able to achieve several feats, but then, like as the story goes, with when with absolute power,
absolute power corrupts absolutely.
Corrupts absolutely. So that was the case with CBATV. He became too strong, and at a point he turned against his own people. Well, you see, like as I've always known, and from what I've learned so far in the world of literature, no man, no matter how great or big, can be greater than the society that created him. And that was the case of CBATV. He had to go down when the time came. And you know, people like Gaariye and other freedom fighters joined together to liberate their society from his iron hand clutches. So you see, the influence of poets at that time cannot be overemphasized. They did huge work to cause a challenge between them, and you know, they became a gadfly. They became gadflies to the regime. They became problem. The regime does not like people who talk too much or who use words to convince the people, to advise the people. So they see them as a threat. And people like Gaariye had to go into exile in Ethiopia at one time and join the Somali national movement then to fight against the oppressive regime of CBATV. So you see, they use their works, and you know, one thing they did, like Gaariye invented a system of poetry that was easily, that can be easily memorized. The daily form of poetry where you have the alliterative lines, you know, whereas the verses we are reading in alliterative lines that can be easily put to mind. So he writes his own version, and invites other poets into the poem and tells them, okay, now I have written mine, Adrawi, you can take over from here and,
from there
and continue. So it elongated length of the poems and the kind of words that were coming. And you know, at that time, it was amazing because everybody could easily memorize verses of the poems by hand, and but they can recite it offhand. So it became a problem because you can't stop them merely by banning what they've written. You have to also stop the mind from memorizing. And you know, the Somalis have this magnetic form of memory. Once they pick up something, they have it here. They reel it out next time. So it's always there like that. And you know, that was the period you have beautiful form of poetry, but the content were strong, but they were talking about a serious situation. You know, because of that, now most of them have to hide behind the facade. They have to create a facade that would make their poetry inaccessible to those who wish to use it for devious means. You know, Gaariye will use, apart from inviting other poets into the poem he has written, at times he used folk tales a lot in the story, like the one on Kudu. He used folk tale to talk about oppressors and how they can't hide their evil deeds. The evil deeds are the horns that the king grows. When you talk about Kudu, there is also another one where he says, I think it's Sia, where he said his aunt told him a story and he narrated the story there. So you see that using those facade, it has always been available. Such things have always been used in our oral society. You know, they want to advise you. A man wants to advise you now. An old man, he will bring in a story to give that advice. It's not always direct. So they basically, most Africans learn the idea of using indirect way to approach matters. We don't go directly. So basically, we are born poets because we know how to present matters without going the direct way, and that is what poetry is about: creating images to represent ideas.
Exactly.
So Gaariye was able to do that a lot in his poems, and at times, if you're not careful, you may be misled. You may think he's talking about something else, but he's actually talking about this. So we see that a lot in his poem. And if you look at Mandela, when after talking about Mandela, he said that the Mandela poem is a mirror to what is happening in his own society. He says, so listen, Abu Hadra, if you will listen, others will listen too. Will hear the words as if Mandela was calling them to arms. They will grasp the blade that is hidden deep inside the poem. So they will grasp the blade that is hidden deep inside the poem. They will show the judge and the jury the cutting edge of freedom. They will show the prosecutor the blade that lasts forever. They will never bow their heads or walk in chains and fetters. This poem is a mirror. You can see that now. He said, this poem is a mirror
I've made for us.
I've made for us, Adrawi. A mirror we can hold up to show the ignoramus, the depth of self-deception that lies in his reflection. You see, who is the ignoramus? That's the question you ask. Who is the ignoramus? So he's talking about the oppressors in the society. He said the depth of self-deception that lies in his reflection. To show the judge and jury how the wide world sees them. To show the man who takes pleasure in pain and going of glee that wafts his smile. Adrawi, read this poem. To anyone who will listen, help them to find the voice I've given to Mandela. That is, help the people to know the truth. And tell them this: our purpose is peace. Our password, freedom. Our aim, equality. Our way, the way of light. So, you see that to him, it's not just, though he's talking about Mandela and trying to right the wrong that exists in the South African society, but then the poem also becomes a mirror or a reflection of what is also happening at the same time in his own society. So it happens like that with his trend of poem. He has this way of bringing up a story or an idea.
To find the voice.
Yes, to find the voice.
What we have talked about that is happening in
South Africa. Let's also look at our own side too and see how we can get out of the horrible situation.
Getting our password, which is the freedom.
Yes.
And getting our purpose, which is peace. So with our aim, which is equality, and the way, which is the way of light.
Yeah, that is it.
That's very, very powerful.
And even he would tell you there, he said in that same poem too, that the poem is a gun.
Yeah.
The poem's an assassin. Images mob my mind. The pen's a spear, a knife, a branding iron, an arrow, tipped with righteous anger. It writes with blood and bile. So it's not just about poetry to him. It is the power the power in language. And Gaariye understands that a lot. He understands how to manipulate language to achieve that desired effect. He knows what dictators fear the most, and that is the man of words, the poet, the writer. And that is why anywhere you have a repressive regime, the first target of every repressive regime are always the writers in the society, because they are afraid of what they can say from their mouth. And for those who know what words can do, where a single word can cause a conflagration, it can cause a revolution in the society. And at the same time, no war in this world has ever been fought and ended with word. You end with words. There should be it always ends with a dialogue, where you have a dialogue and you decide that. So that is the power that is embodied in the use of language. And Gaariye seems to understand this and knows how to manipulate it. It's very evident in his poetry.
There's something I found out in Somali poetry style.
Yeah.
Unlike the Western system where we talk about rhyming scheme, and the rhyming scheme is on the other side of the last side.
Yes, the end rhymes.
Their own is beginning rhymes, not the end rhymes.
Yeah,
so they can start with S has to go like that, or D. So they create their own style, which I have not seen in any part of the world.
I think that is, we call that alliteration in English, and it was formerly, poetry is not what it is today anymore. In the ancient days, in the class, I think that was in the early modern era, the Old English period. During that age, there was much use of alliterative lines, and it was more like what you have in the Somali society today, and it extends down to even the Middle Age, where you have Geoffrey Chaucer. Geoffrey Chaucer. If you check the Canterbury Tales, you'll find this use of alliterative lines much. It exists very much in such poems, but with time, poetry became watered down, and it did not have the kind of allure that it had those days back then, because why they were doing it like that way was because these poems were being committed to memory, and to make it easy to commit, you need to put it in a kind of musical form. Yes, and alliteration, assonance, rhyme, and this is onomatopoeia. Yes, you're right. And pun. These are musical devices used in poetry formation. So those writers then explored the use of these kind of words. And in Africa, we had vivid ideophones. We had for instance, in Yoruba now, the word owo can be owo, can be owo. So it can be honor, broom, hand at the same time. So it's just a matter of how you manipulate it, and you see that occurring in Yoruba poetry a lot. So that is the same way it happens with time, because when this thing has to be committed to memory, it has to be produced in a way that it can easily be memorized. So, but with time now, and the English people dumped that, and during the neoclassical age, what was more in vogue was end rhymes. And in fact, if you write a poem without end rhymes, then it will be castigated as nothing. And I think that was the days of Alexander Pope, where he was very much fed in that area, because when he says that, when he condemns your poem, nobody even wants to read that poem anymore. So there was much use of end rhymes until the day on the Romantic era, and William Wordsworth came about and said, "What is all this? That poetry should be the spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings, collected in tranquility." So he said that it shouldn't be based on rhyme, like the neoclassical era advocated. That is the Restoration era. And so he came up with this idea of poetry that was not based on rhyme, and he wrote these poems, and they were beautiful too. And by any standard, you cannot belittle them that they are not poems. They are poems too. But with that now, changes begin to happen. In the modern era now, we now use free verse, so it was much. It has changed from what it used to be, and that's how to know something, because literature is not like any other thing. It is something. It is alive. It is a living object, and it exists and will continue to exist. It is living. So, and anything that exists and lives must undergo change at certain times.
Sure.
So that is what has happened to English poetry. So coming back to Somali poetry, I know Gaariye made much impact in that part, because that issue of alliterative lines, that style, I think he evolved it. It's called Dili, and Gaariye evolved that system, and it's very much appreciated for bringing that such system. And I know most Somali will tell you that if you are reciting the poetry and a poem and it doesn't have that rhyme pattern, the alliterative verse line, then it is
even
no
when they
to
do
them.
competition.
Yeah, when they do competition.
Then you read the first, you make your own first parts.
Yeah.
Another person will pick it from there and ask to start with the same alliterative system.
Good. And
they have that opted to
that shows you that these people are a creative set of people that needs to be explored. You know, there's much work that scholars need to do in the area of studying Somali literature. We have left them in the western part. We don't know, because the inaccessibility of the language. We are unable to. But even if you get to read their prose, their works in prose, their novels. I've read Mohamed Nadifa's work, and
we'll be talking about that.
When you read that, you see the ease with which a sentence flow into poetry. It's poetic prose that you see there. It's not just everyday language. The language, the prose is heightened. It's the sublime form of prose. You see the language flowing. The images she brings into a description. You marvel and say, how is one person able to think about creating such beautiful lines? You know, it's to you it reads as poetry, but she's writing prose, and that is the way it works with them. They are very creative with language, and you know, it doesn't even have to do with education. Somebody who has not even attended any school before, and the person sits down here just right now and creates lines that rhyme. And this is something that the Western world pride itself on and say, okay, we created this and we know how to do this. Yet there's an illiterate man at one corner of the world that can produce virtually the same thing and even better than what you have, without even exploring their work,
without having any knowledge of what.
That is where you marvel. You know, at the beginning we said Gaariye was a biologist, and for a biologist you would expect him to be teaching biology or dealing with plants, but he diverted into the area of language, even became a lecturer in Somali literature in that area. So you can see that there are some people who are naturally talented, who are gifted with this gift. I believe that writing can be learned. You can learn how to write, but still there are those who are just naturally gifted with it, or that the ability to create, to be creative. Creativity is sometimes you are born with it, and sometimes you learn it. But most often you see those who are just there. They can do it, and Gaariye falls into that category. He's excellent.
This is where we're going to put the content of this show today, and by the time we come back next time, I'm sure you have enjoyed this. If you don't know about Gaariye before, now you know. If you need to explore more, keep watching Artflakes. That is the only program in the entire East Africa on CBA that you can get unique things. Keep watching and see you next time.